About a year ago, I was talking to a friend of mine, and he vaped all the time. And I said to him, I think you shouldn't vape. And he said, well, I think vaping is fine. And that's like a typical conversation. I mean, it was more nuanced than that. We're like having a conversation about vaping and smoking and pot. And I said, my concern is, like long-term studying, but like in the end, do you really need to do it? I understand a lot of people do it because they like the flavors, or I have no idea. I don't know why people do that stuff. I don't smoke, never smoke. And he said, oh, it's fine. I like doing it. And the guy at the shop told me it was totally safe. And I started laughing. And I was like, wait, the guy at the shop told you it was safe? He's like, yeah, so it must be fine. And I'm like, your dealer told you that you're vaping. Like, of course he's going to tell you it's safe, dude. He's trying to sell you a product. Now, look, I think where we are right now, it does seem that vaping is safer than smoking cigarettes. However, we are getting a string of press about vaping-related illnesses and even a vaping-related death. Now, my general understanding of this is that there's some vape juice or whatever you call it, that's gone out that tried to use some kind of an additive to kind of inflate the amount of, vape juice or whatever you call it. I don't vape. It tried to inflate how much you had by filler. And this resulted in an immune response in a lot of people, which gives them like pneumonia-like symptoms. And apparently someone died. I don't know if it's the same dude, but I was reading a story about someone who was on an artificial lung, like not the one where they breathe for you, one where they actually pump blood out of your body into a machine to fix the blood and put it back. And I'm like, y'all need to stop vaping. But I'll say this. I'm not a doctor. Read the news for yourself. You figure it out for yourself. I think, I know like San Francisco, I think banned vaping or something. I think pot should be legal. I think people should choose what they want to do. And, we should do the best we can to make sure people are informed. And that's kind of what I do, right? I'm just going to tell you the facts. So here's what I did. I pulled up all sides because it's a really interesting issue, vaping. How do people feel about it? People on the right are typically more likely to say we shouldn't legalize pot. People on the left say we should legalize pot. I'm all for legalizing pot. And I want to see how it's addressed because I got to be honest, look, I don't know anything about vaping. I don't want to tell you it's unsafe because there's one string of, outbreaks or whatever. But at least in one area, Milwaukee urges residents to stop vaping. Now, before we jump into the story, head over to youtube.com/TimCastIRL, a new channel that's going to feature on-the-ground reporting, traveling. Subscribe. It's also like a backup channel. I always try to make sure I'm diversifying the content I do because you never know when YouTube's going to come and just destroy your channel like they've done to so many people. But this will be an on-the-ground channel. It's going to be a lot of traveling, eating grandma's pie in the middle of the country, talking about how they feel, how's the economy, all that good stuff. Get away from the big national opinions and talk to real Americans. youtube.com/TimCastIRL. But let's read the news. All Sides reports. The city of Milwaukee warned residents to stop vaping in the midst of an outbreak of lung disease this week. All of those suffering from lung complications in Milwaukee admitted to being chronic users of either THC vaporizers or e-cigarettes. Last week, an Illinois man became the first vaping-related death after lung complications from regularly using a THC vaporizer. Illinois has the most vape-related illnesses in the country. Some right-leaning media sources quickly blamed marijuana and its widespread use, even going as far as suggesting that legalization would worsen the problem. I disagree. They then go on to say some left-leaning media voices promoted the contrary, reporting that because marijuana is not legalized, research, quality control, and proper testing are made more difficult. And I agree with that assessment. Look, you guys know me. But here's the thing. It's really funny when people talk about prohibiting, pot or drugs or beer. And it's like, we know prohibition doesn't work. We know prohibition results in black markets. You can say the same thing for firearms. Banning it isn't going to stop people who want to get it from getting it. Now, admittedly, if you ban, THC vaporizers and pot, you'll see a lot less law-abiding citizens using it, but you will see a dramatic increase in criminal use because a lot of people who weren't criminals before will be criminals now. So I tend to be, I'm very, very, pro-freedom on this one. I think if somebody wants to choose to pour something down their lungs, look, man, if somebody wants to choose to eat a Tide Pod, that's your decision. I mean, admittedly, with a Tide Pod, I'd probably try and stop you, you know what I mean? But should the government show up to your house, put a have and say, no Tide Pods for you? It's a challenge, it is, because we don't want people, hurting themselves, but we also shouldn't have a system where we can force people to live the way we think they should live. especially when it comes to vaporizers, when it comes to pot, when it comes to drugs, things that actually don't immediately kill you, but could be bad for you if abused. And that's a lot of drugs, especially opioids right now in the crisis. So we have 3 stories, and I actually wanted to pull the centrist version, because we've heard what they're saying about the right, that right-wingers are saying, hey, this is going to get worse if we legalize, pot. The left is saying, no, we should. But let's read the center. Let's read the full story from USA Today. It's probably going to be very generic. But they say, Milwaukee's alert comes as federal officials say there are more than 200 potential cases of lung disease linked to e-cigarettes reported in 22 states. There are 16 confirmed cases in Wisconsin, with 15 other cases under investigation, state health officials said. We continue to learn more about the health effects associated with e-cigarettes, Milwaukee Health Commissioner Jeanette Koalik said in a statement. As the public health authority for the city, the MHD is committed to protecting the public from the dangers of secondhand exposure. I guess never mind, there's not a whole lot there. So then let's check out what the conservatives have to say. The city urged people to immediately contact their doctor if they experience any of the following symptoms: anorexia, cough, diarrhea, fatigue, fever, nausea, chest pain, or shortness of breath. But I suppose now we can jump over to the Daily Mail, which they say is right-wing, and see what their opinion is, if they have one at all. Now, interestingly, the Daily Mail tends to fluff their stories up, with a ton of content. So we'll dive down past the basics because we already know this. They say, officials revealed last week that an Illinois patient had died from a serious lung disease that was contracted after vaping. I think this was the thing that I was reading about, and it was an autoimmune disease. They're trying to learn which specific vaping products were used in that case, as well as others, and whether they were being used as intended or mixed with other substances. So far, federal and state investigators have not linked the illnesses to any specific product, but they have said some patients reported vaping with cannabis liquids. Electronic cigarettes have been described as a less dangerous alternative to regular cigarettes, but health officials have been worried about children using them. Most of the concern has focused on nicotine, which health officials say is harmful to developing brains and might make children more likely to take up cigarettes, also if they just keep vaping nonstop. However, some vaping products have been found to contain other potentially harmful substances, including flavoring chemicals and oils used for vaping marijuana. A number of the people who got sick had vaped products containing THC, the high-inducing ingredient in marijuana. CDC officials said they do not yet have a breakdown of how many of the sick people vaped THC. Florida college student Chance Amarada, 18, revealed earlier this month that he suffered a collapsed lung due to the chemicals in his mint Juul pods. And then we can see a bunch of products. But I guess they're not really getting into the bulk of the argument, I suppose. There's some stuff. But they basically just keep repeating the same thing, strangely enough. So let's skip all of this and let's just talk about legalization of drugs. You know what, man? I don't know if it's a left position or a right position. I have no idea. I know it's a libertarian position that we should legalize all drugs, all of them. I tend to be in favor of that. So let me know if you disagree, but here's what I think. It's true. I definitely side with the left perspective from all sides that by having these things be illegal, people will get them anyway if they choose to, and then you'll have a black market behind it. One of the biggest things that's fueling the cartels in Mexico is that we have a black market. But when you legalize these drugs, you put them in highly controlled facilities, you can regulate and tax, and you can educate and refine. So you'll end up with these really trashy drugs that are really, really bad for people, and you can refine it into something special. But not only that, if they say, let's say they legalized heroin, which is shocking, right? I know that libertarians have argued whether or not you should be able to, like anyone should be able to buy it, even kids. But think about this. What if the legalization involved facilities where they provided you with heroin in a controlled circumstance and they wouldn't let you use a certain dose, no matter what your symptoms were, and could initiate a detox process if they saw that people were, heavily addicted? I don't know if it's the right thing to do. I don't. But I definitely think the war on drugs is a failed operation. Just locking people up in prison because they got addicted to a drug makes literally no sense, especially now as we're facing this opioid crisis. There are people who got hooked on drugs because they were unemployed, they got hurt, or they got hurt, lost their job, got the drugs, became addicted, and now get it from the streets. So we need a solution to this. And like Dave Chappelle made a bunch of points about like the crack epidemic. And this is the big problem I have with private prisons and the prison system as it is. I do not believe drug use should be an offense that could get you imprisoned. To me, that makes no sense. Now, I think, selling it to kids and a bunch of other things related to that, sure. But if someone's choosing to use something, be it vaping, marijuana, heroin, whatever, What they need is help. They need someone to help guide them in a direction that's going to make them productive and feel fulfilled without using a substance to do it. You lock them up in jail, you're not doing anything for them. You're taking somebody whose only real problem was substance abuse, nonviolent offenses, and putting them in a place where they can't live in... I just think, across the board, I think prison is just bad. Because I think you take people, the argument is, as similarly with censorship, you take people who smoke pot and you put them in prison with bank robbers. So why would you do that? That's a culture you don't want to develop. What we need to do is figure out how we can make sure people are healthy. If we keep everything illegal, if we prohibit it, then you'll just have a lot of criminals, and you'll have a black market, and you'll have people doing dirty, gross drugs and spreading disease, and I think that's a bad idea. So, look, far be it from me to be the expert, but I will add one final thing. Admittedly, these past few segments have been very difficult with everything that's been going on throughout the day. So for that, I apologize. But you know what? It is what it is. Thanks for hanging out. Stick around. Next segment will be tomorrow at 10 a.m. Podcast at 6:30 p.m. And I will see you next time. Hopefully. Yeah.